Now I'm delighted to get a chance to introduce our next speaker. As an investor and an entrepreneur in clean tech over the last 30 years, I've looked to Ahmad Chatila as really one of the great entrepreneurs, the most accomplished entrepreneurs and investors in the space. He is founder and managing partner of the Fenice investment group and has 30 years experience in deep innovation, investment in business mentorship, and deep expertise in semiconductors and the energy transition. He's been an investor, board member, et cetera, of many technology companies, including Next Gen Power, FTC Solar, Dimension Energy, Arca Energy, Ohmium International, Solaria, and Enphase. And Enphase, he was a catalyst in the company's transformation from $100 million in market cap to be a leader in the solar industry with a market cap of $14 billion. That kind of growth is tremendous. Throughout his career, Ahmad has exemplified the power of perseverance and resilience, which is essential for anyone who wants to engage in the cutting edge of innovation in energy transition and particularly in the startup entrepreneurship and venture investing part of the sector. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Ahmad.
Thank you very much. First, I want to thank Marcus Willem for inviting me. I met him a couple of years ago, and what struck me about him is he's a rare breed of a strategic leader who's detail-oriented. He knew more about my product than I did, and he told me so. So he's open about it. So thank you, Marcus, for inviting me today. And I want to thank Lenny John also, who works for Marcus, leading all his procurement, for inviting me. Today, I'm going to give you a little bit of an education about hydrogen, and then we're going to go into a challenge, okay? So first here, the hydrogen industry is a large industry today. It's around 97 million tons a year. To give you a perspective, steel worldwide is 2 billion tons. Coal is 4.5 billion tons. The price of a ton in hydrogen is around a couple of $1,000. Steel in a low-cost country is like $600. Here is $1,100. Coal, $160 per ton. So you can get the gist of this one. US demand is 15 million tons, mostly created through natural gas, SMR. The applications are refineries, fertilizer, methanol, steel, semiconductors, even solar cell facilities use hydrogen. Green hydrogen is using solar, wind, geothermal, other renewable energy sources combined with water, H2O, to produce hydrogen and oxygen, H2 and O2. The efficiency of this process, and I'm going to tell you now that because later on it's going to be important, is measured for me from the input to the output at, let's say, 15 or 20 bar, should be around 50 kilowatt hours per kilogram. And that's important later on for the cost information. 50 kilowatt hours per kilogram. Some machines is 57, some is 49, but let's use 50 for now. The industry can be much larger than today. In here, I'm showing 3.7 terawatt of electrolyzer installations from now until 2050. Let's step back. When I talked about 97 million tons, at 50% capacity factor of electrolyzers, it's around 1 terawatt. So if I want to green all hydrogen that is produced today around the world, I need 1 terawatt of electrolyzers at 50% capacity factor. And this is a muted forecast from 2024 from Bloomberg New Energy Finance. Used to be 3-4 times larger at some point at the upper scale and twice as large at the target scale. Let me tell you now the challenge. In US today, the cost of hydrogen using natural gas around $1.70 per kilogram. But if you use solar to do the same, it will cost us $4.70. So it's not economic. At least without the IRA, you cannot make it. If you use hydrogen, if you use solar and wind, which improves the capacity factor of the hydrogen facility, you can get a cost of $3.74. Still not economic. So let's imagine now I give the hydrogen equipment for free. It's $2.70. Still, we cannot make it. So why is it like that? If you look actually at the cost of energy, it is around $2. Let's go back to the 50 kilowatt hours per kilogram. That means the price of renewables is 4 cents per kilowatt hour. And actually, if you go to Texas, I'm not doing development anymore, but I think the latest numbers are as follows. For wind is maybe $32 to $35 per megawatt hours for wind, and for solar it's around 38 to 45, depending on where it is and the capacity factor. So clearly the cost of renewables is so high that it cannot be economic unless the government comes in with a lot of subsidies, right? Okay. So why is it so high? Now let me tell you, in my perspective, why it is. Because in the case of solar, it's so much higher cost in US than anywhere else in the world. In US, it cost us for a utility scale project $1.1 per watt in Texas to make it. Last project that one of my friends is working on is 1.09. But another PJM project is 1.6. In Spain, so I'm not using super low cost country. In Spain, it's 44 euro cents, 45 cents per watt. The cost of a panel in Spain is 9 cents landed right now. 9 cents. In US, it's 35, and it's not a great technology. Not only we use thin films, which is lower efficiency, but we use PERC technology, which is not that great. TOPCon, even the TOPCon that we use is a generation behind or half a generation behind where China is producing. So we're spending 35 cents on a panel when Spanish industry is using 9 cents. The tracker in Spain is 6 cents. In US, it's 10, 11 cents, sometimes 12. In India, where I am personally building projects, this one is a small project I'm building, it's 27 cents for fixed tilt. If I had to do single axis tracker, it would be 30 cents. But large companies that my colleagues are building is 23 cents. 23 cents. What does this mean, by the way? And by the way, this is only utility scale. Residential, we're $2 higher than other people. And if you do the calculation, that's around 40, 50 billion that we spend more on solar every year than other countries. Multiply by 10, that's $500 billion. Does that make sense? Raise your hand if you think that's the right thing to do. Of course, no one's going to raise their hand because it doesn't make sense at all, actually. Why is it like that? Because of all the tariffs we have. As well as other things, inflation and labor, higher insurance costs. Some of the sites maybe are not that great because we're not getting the proper sites to build our solar, so we have to do a lot of cut and fill. There's many, many reasons, but tariff is really devastating. And you would think that it's a good thing for our industry. So let's talk about steel, for example. So remember how we're spending 5 cents more on trackers, which is close to $2 billion a year? We have already 85 million tons of steel in this country. We literally can build 1,000 aircraft carriers a year from a national security perspective, and we only have 11. We can build 130 million cars because at 85 million tons, we're at 75% utilization. So if you increase the utilization to 100%, you can build 130 million cars, more all the cars that you need in the world, because today there's only 90 million vehicles built worldwide. So clearly, we do not need more steel. Do we need manufacturing? Absolutely. We need shipbuilding. Shipbuilding is less than 1% market share we have, while Korea, with 51 million people, they have 25% market share. Does that make sense? Of course not. It doesn't make sense. So, but what is the impact on hydrogen? It's devastating because our costs are not competitive. We can make it. If we use Spanish costs, while the electrolyzer technology does not improve, our cost will be $3. But based on the company I'm involved in, I think within 4 years, we can improve the efficiency of the machines and the cost of the equipment so that the cost of PV plus wind will be $1.87, and now you're going head-to-head with natural gas. But if you use only solar, it's even lower. Why? If you use solar that Spain is using, while the capacity factor of the hydrogen facility is less, but the energy cost is so much lower, overall, now you're lower than natural gas on average. And now I don't need the IRA. Don't need it. And actually, that's my presentation. Reduce tariffs, implement EPC techniques. Marcus is the master here, but help him with insurance and allow him to build projects in the right place. Reduce labor cost. He knows how to do it. Not every EPC company knows how to do it. There's a huge dispersion in construction time from 190 man-hour per megawatt for trackers to 730. Huge dispersion. On green hydrogen, we have to do our job on innovation, albeit the cost or the efficiency of the machines. And now, actually, I want to keep it to catch up on time, but also get as many questions as you wish, and please challenge me. Please.
Vikram Bhatia. What is your view, if any, on natural hydrogen? Now, there are a couple of companies, at least one, that's very highly capitalized already, that is claiming some pretty strong numbers. Natural hydrogen meaning hydrogen coming out of the ground. Do you have a view on that?
I'm really sorry, I do not have experience with it. I've heard about the same way,
Okay.
but I do not have experience with it, and I'm not technically savvy enough to answer your question.
Okay, so going back to the 50 kilowatt hours, so that is your, there's no way to get around that. That's thermodynamics, right?
Sorry?
There's no way to get around that. So the only way to get around it is lower price of electricity. That's it, right?
There is a way. So let's talk about hydrogen. Hydrogen naturally will be 39.6 kilowatt hours. So the machines today that are leading edge can do 50 or 49. It can get to 45, 44 within 5 years. So it can improve. It cannot get to 39.6. But yes, you can absolutely improve that.
Hello, Ahmad. I'm JP Mascarella. I did a study a few years ago for Chile, the country, because they depended on Argentina for their natural gas. And then the Argentines had cut them off, and that created a lot of heartburn. What we did was we studied a ton of use cases. They have a lot of mining, and they have a lot of solar. And we just determined that it was very impossible to get to the price point to compete with other hydrogen, other fuels for the use cases, especially, heavy use cases like mining. Then we looked at the subsidy, because then the government goes, well, can we subsidize it? And so I said, yes, of course, if there's enough subsidy, everything works. And what I feel is that there's a geopolitical context to this hydrogen. If you subsidize it enough, then the projects will start making sense. Then the capital costs will start coming down. And then from an economic development perspective, it'll start substituting some of the fuels. Can you comment on sort of two things? One is, does it still make sense for the IRA law to support this? I have a view on that, but I won't. And the second point is, what is the main goal for hydrogen producers? Is it just a cost, or is it also, creating harder infrastructures? Do you see what I mean by that? Because infrastructure is going through a lot of transformation in this country, and I'm trying to understand if hydrogen is better for us in the long run, just from a resiliency perspective. Those are my two questions: geopolitics and resilience.
Thank you. So first of all, you chose Chile, which is amazing. I operated there for a while. We were the first company in my previous life to build a 100 megawatt project with no incentives. It was the first one worldwide in 2013. Chile is actually unique because there's no tariff and you can have solar costs to be really, really low. Now, but the cost of capital is a little bit higher than US because of, they're not the US, they don't have US dollar. It's best actually to make steel there. So instead of making hydrogen, compress it and ship it, just make steel and ship steel. And if I was actually a Japanese conglomerate or an American company and I want to balance the geopolitical risk of China, which has 1 billion out of the 2 billion tons of steel, I will actually flip the script on China. I'll do DRI in Chile, make all the BSF factories in China obsolete from a green perspective, create green steel for Porsche, Volkswagen Group, Mercedes, all that, and make it in steel and ship it. So that's like Chile. Okay, US, let's step back a little bit. Do I need steel, green hydrogen, everything? No. Electric vehicles dominate, and they should. Now, is there other places on Earth that might need hydrogen cars? Yes, like Mumbai, India. You have a complex of 1,000 apartments in one building. You're not going to have 1,000 chargers. You have 1 million people employed in gas stations. You're not going to lay them off. So there's certain places, islands, that could be interesting. So then hydrogen can take a few percentage points. Now, for us geopolitically, Korea and Japan have no natural resources to make solar and wind. Literally, they can't do it. We can do stuff in Texas and ship it. So when you make green hydrogen expensive here, we're missing the opportunity of exporting like 100, 200 million tons in the long run, although we only use 15 and might go to 30 for our own use. But we're missing that opportunity for export, which can be a $300 to $600 billion industry within 25 years. That's what we're missing. That's how I look at it from a geopolitical perspective. Look, we have natural gas. Look, if solar ceases to exist today completely, will we stop? No. If iPhone ceases to exist completely, then we're dead. So we need to make semiconductors in this country, okay? That's what we need to make. From a hydrogen, the export will be amazing if the cost is competitive. And it starts with me doing my work on the electrolyzer cost, but renewable energy has to be lower. But I'm not optimistic. Yeah, thank you for your question.
Just on the, thank you for your presentation, and over with your career all the way back, Dave Kirkpatrick at SJF Ventures, with Sun Edison and all the way forward, we have used tax credits and policy to incentivize the transition given tariffs, and they're not going away with the current administration, right? So I guess, how do we navigate the next few years with continuing the transition on solar, wind, hydrogen, et cetera? In my sense is we need to try to defend the tax credits.
What?
Defend the tax credits.
Tax credits.
For now, because we've got to countervail the tariffs, right, until we can get some more rationality. Is that your sense?
I actually think the tax credit is very helpful because all industries get some kind of support, and energy is a national security issue. Now, I'm going to tell you that, and I'm not going to be popular. I think the $3 per kilogram on hydrogen in the IRA is not sustainable. Just imagine the following. My wife is Brazilian, so let's imagine a Brazilian company shows up. They build a huge project in Texas. They get $3 incentive, but they ship the hydrogen to China. How would that feel? Does that make sense to you? Of course not. So the $3 was trying to cover for the weakness in our renewable energy cost. Why? Because of tariff and people raising the flag. We need to have manufacturing jobs here. Yes, in semiconductors, biofuels, robotics, biotechnology, all that we need, but not in making PERC solar cells in North America. That's not what's required. But the tax incentive is important.
The
next 5 to 10 years.
Important to note that oil and gas has had twice the incentive for decades, even though it's a mature industry.
Sure.
So
Definitely.
yeah.
Yes.
Building on the tariff question, I know that some folks in the audience are influencing policymakers in Washington, D.C., and so given that we will likely see these tariffs for some time, I'm curious what advice you'd give to them. And the second part of the question is, you mentioned lean EPC techniques. I'm curious to know what EPCs, because there are some in the audience, could learn as far as advanced techniques.
All right, so two things. Thank you, Andy, for the question. Let's talk about, actually, I have a question for you. What is so special about the human brain? What is like the power of it? What is a metric that you can say human brain is amazing at?
Good question. I would say we can think logically and make decisions different than others with brains in the
Yes, at low energy. Mm-hmm. Actually, the metric is that the brain uses 20 watts. Think about that, less than a light bulb. And it's the most energy efficient per instruction computer in the world. That's what it is. And if you think actually, what is the future of data centers? Why? Because of AI. But how can you make AI more efficient as a country if you really want to make it? Hardware, Moore's Law, NVIDIA chips, or wideband semiconductors like silicon carbide, gallium nitride, which North Carolina is amazing at because of Wolfspeed and other companies. And this triangle that you have here, better software algorithms, and renewable energy cost that is low. So when you make renewable energy costs high, you are not destroying, I don't want to use that term. You are making us even less efficient than we can be to truly dominate, because we have the semiconductors, we do have the algorithms. It will be a shame if we don't take advantage of the lowest energy cost in the world, like truly, like 1 cent per kilowatt hour. If the tariff really helps, it would have been used forever in places. Look at Japan. They use tariff forever. They don't have an economy today. They don't. So they're good when they are competing worldwide with Toyota. What are actually the names? I'll ask you a question here. And I'm willing, actually, Patrick Cook is here. We give him $500 if someone is able to answer this name. Give me the top 3 computer companies, not software, computer companies in Europe. Go. Top 3 computer companies in Europe. Tell me the name. Marcus is German. He you might know. It's not Olivetti, gone. It's not Nixdorf, gone. It's not Siemens, gone. What happened? Because in the 80s, at some point, at the critical moment of the personal computer industry, Europe put tariff on DRAMs, dynamic random access memories, that really made their computer industry much weaker. And to protect, at that time, Siemens DRAM technology, as well as others at ST Microelectronics. So tariffs don't work. You're destroying all the other things that we're doing, like the ability to export green hydrogen and be the best in AI. Now, in terms of lean techniques, look, I studied lean extensively. I had teams, but I'm not the guy. I'm not a black belt in lean techniques, but I'll give you an example. Like one of the things that our teams found, like the way EPC companies, they do work, is they finish something, they go to the next, they finish something, they go to the next. But if you roll those crews, that'll be good. Monitoring the crews, a lot of times you hire these people, you put them in the field, you got sometimes their families with them, but they're sitting idle most of the time. They're not doing real construction. So that could be managed even more effectively. So there's a lot of AI, software, tracking, drones that you could use to monitor, because a lot of executives who are really smart in the EPC companies, if they know, they will do something about it, but when they don't know, they cannot. So that's how I would answer that.
Great, thanks, Ahmad.
You're welcome.
Hi. Hi, my name is Sujin Chang. Thank you for the presentation. In terms of technology to manufacture hydrogen, there are SMR, you just mentioned electrolysis, and also there's the plasma. So I just wondering if I can get your opinion on making hydrogen with plasma technology. There are ways to do it using biogas, or some do it with air and etc. Just wanted to know if you have any opinions on those. Thank you.
I'm more familiar with green electrolyzer approach. And there are like 3 ways to do it there. There's other innovation we absolutely need to do because what we have today might not be the best in the long run. One is proton exchange membrane, alkaline, and solid oxide fuel cells, okay? Or electrolyzer, solid oxide electrolyzer. Each one has its own advantages and disadvantages. The reason why I bet on proton exchange membrane, because it reminded me a lot of mono versus multi in solar. If you are a solar expert somewhat or used it, the theory of business in solar in the early 2010s used to be thin film is low cost, low efficiency, multicrystalline is medium cost, medium efficiency, and mono is high cost, high efficiency. And we flipped the script and made mono low cost and high efficiency. And proton exchange membrane is like that. There's many other reasons, like you cannot test alkaline equipment in the factory. You only can test them in the field because you have to add a chemical to be able to test it. So the failure rate on these projects are around 40% in the field. The technology is much older, much known, around 80 years. Proton exchange membrane is only 30 years, so people prefer alkaline because of that long history. But plasma, not familiar with. Others, I'm not familiar with.
Hi, I'm Calvin with Activate. We see a lot of electrolyzers and hydrogen technologies. Can you talk a little bit about co-location between customers for hydrogen and then where you might need to generate and find this CapEx to create it?
Very much. This is the way you make money. Because in hydrogen, it's very hard to handle. You have to, if you want to transport it, either you have to convert to ammonia, which there's shipping and all that, but there's not enough capacity to do it, or you have to compress it, liquefy it, and later on crack it again. You don't want to go through all that. So the best known method right now, and there's enough business to do it, is to, as much as you can, put the hydrogen production next to the demand center. And that's how you ensure that those dollars that I used are true. Because if you have to move it around, it would be a lot more more expensive. So one of the companies I advise pro bono is called Novo Hydrogen, and he's a developer, and he basically focuses mainly on that. Even for refineries in West Texas, for example, it will be a project like that, instead of trying to ship it elsewhere at this moment. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Liz Kayleys. I'm with the Nature Conservancy, and I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about water consumption and what kind of water consumption we would see if we were at sort of a maximum production scenario in the U.S.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
I'm interested in water consumption impacts.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep. I think you need 5,600 liters per ton of hydrogen. And if you look at the freshwater supply in the world versus if you use my 3.75 terawatts, which is around 400 million tons, you will need 1 in 200,000 of the freshwater supply in the world. That's number one. But the nuance is sometimes in the desert, you can't talk about the freshwater supply in the Amazon and in Mississippi and say, well, I can do it. Ahmad just said this 1 on 200,000, I can do it. So the technology that we have can use seawater, can use water from city, byproduct of the city. So you need to have that. But from a geological perspective, it's no big deal. It is doable. And the nuance is in certain areas you have to be a little bit more innovative of how you deal with it because there's no water. And yeah, you see water. Thank you. All right. I think that's it. Thank you very much.